Hey there, Valentin. So I have already read through your essay and I've seen your questions down here. Now, first things first, your essay isn't actually that long. I normally recommend 280 to 300 words, and you're only 9 words over that maximum limit. So I wouldn't worry too much about the length of your sentences right now, but let's have a look through and see if there are any opportunities just to trim them a little bit, make them a little more efficient. Now, the majority of the points that I have here are regarding articles. So I'm just going to stick articles in wherever they're necessary, but I'll speak more about the lengths of sentences as I go through. So the tempo with which new technologies induce changes in human society has reached an extent that was described by the famous writer, when we introduce a name, the famous writer Toffler, as future shock. In my opinion, people should rather adjust to continuously emerging changes than try to force nature so people, in my opinion, people should adjust to continuously emerging changes rather than trying to force nature to adapt to them. I think that just sounds more natural. Furthermore, I think that some new developments indeed improve either mental capabilities or intellectual capacity, intellectual potential, lots of phrases we could use there, but mind capabilities would not be correct. We should use mental, something descriptive. Humans should adapt their life and society to changing technologies. Okay, so we're getting a little bit philosophical here for this. Remember that this is an English language exam, not an intelligence test. So while we are expected to provide academically honest and sound arguments, we're not expected to be writing at a master's degree or PhD level, for instance. So, if your topic is that humans should adapt their lives, actually, that's a point. Lives and societies or societies, either would be good. We're either referring to human society globally or the different societies separated by national boundaries. I think societies would be more appropriate because the decision-making ability still rests with the national bodies. So let me have a look at your example to see if I can make sense of this. So regardless of many technological advancements, I agree with you with all of this, but I don't understand how it relates to adapting to technology, especially as, even here, you've put regardless of technological advancements. But this is in our example, so we're supposed to be here supporting the idea of adapting to technology. And instead we dismiss technological advancements and begin to talk about famine and sanitary conditions. Now, this would be okay if we were going to loop it back to adapting to technology, but we haven't done. We've just continued to talk about human rights and the rights of people to live in clean and nice conditions. But this is not related to the question. So I would consider rewriting this paragraph to refer specifically to the benefits that could be achieved by changing behaviors to suit emerging technologies. Because again, here, you say, while technologies could either help solve or aggravate problems, again, you don't settle on either side. You just sort of raise the idea that it could go either way. And then here you dismiss it entirely. So you raise a topic that you then don't answer and then dismiss while talking about something else entirely. So let me just have a quick look at your grammar. So that's not... Yeah, so this paragraph definitely needs to be clearer, because if you're talking about environmental preservation, that's not clear here. Also, this use of a colon is not quite correct. For example, regardless of many technological advancements, famine and appalling sanitary conditions in many developing countries still exist because of unsatisfactory local governance. Here we could just say, such as in many countries of Central Africa and some states in Southeast Asia. And we don't need this article here. Not to mention the basic human rights of every person on Earth. Cool. But again, my key point remains that this is off topic. Try not to use obviously. It's almost rude in the sense that if it were obvious, we wouldn't be writing about it. So one of the positive points is that technology makes people more intelligent. Makes is a bit informal, so we could be more precise here. Improves human intellectual capacity. Elaboration doesn't quite work here either, one sec. So let's say new applications for resources increasing consumption and the usage of new devices have made people, in general, more advanced. We don't need this colon here either. A comma is fine. For instance, as a result of technological progress and growth of knowledge about the world, people are becoming subjected to increasingly more sophisticated things, such as new advanced school programs and new digital devices, which, in turn, multiple things contribute to people's intellectual development. How, though? You need to explain how this happens. The learning process in general, learning to do something new, can be said to be an act of improving one's intellect. So we need to speak about the learning process itself. And I do feel that's a fundamental argument in this essay. If we are to adapt our behaviour to emerging technologies, it necessitates a learning process. And following through on that learning process and completing it in the way that school or university is the same kind of learning process that we follow through on and we complete, makes us smarter. We generally agree that completing a learning makes us smarter, and every emerging technology presents us with an opportunity to learn. So this is a more sort of inline argument that we could use. Because my issue with your paragraphs here is they're a little bit unfocused. They go off topic slightly, and they don't necessarily, especially this one, they don't necessarily raise arguments that are relevant to the question. You've raised this interesting idea here that the rate at which change is induced has reached future shock. I would expect a further, more detailed discussion of this down here. So in conclusion, I think that it is necessary for humans and their technologies to adapt to nature in order to maintain balance between environment preservation and implementation of new technologies. Also, people should not overestimate their growing intellectual potential. Yeah, so my main criticism of this essay is that it's unfocused. I think you should try to simplify your writing somewhat and focus more on staying within the boundaries of the question. So this question, should humans adapt to technology or should technology be adapted to us? That should be covered here. Is technology making us intellectually weaker or more intelligent? Should be covered here. And the conclusion of each part of the question should be very, very clear. And the explanation should be obviously very relevant. But let's have a look at your second piece. So the bar chart compares predictions of, or the predicted numbers of visitors to London, Paris, Madrid and Istanbul from 3 different countries in 2018. Good. Works. It can be seen that Istanbul is expected to be. Remember that this is future projections. This is not certain. It can be seen that Istanbul is expected to be the most popular foreign city among Canadians. I'm going to say this is a point of pedantry. But we don't know about their nationality. We only know about which country they are flying from. The country of origin for a tourist is not necessarily their country of nationality, although the two are so close together as I think an IELTS examiner may not even notice it. But just to be as exacting as we can, let's separate those two. A person's country of origin in terms of tourism is not the same, necessarily, as their country of birth. So the same here. And also, I wouldn't talk about what people's favourite is. Let's talk about the preferred location for the visitors originating from the USA. It is also clear that the lowest projected overall number of visitors from a single country, the lowest projected number, is from Mexico. Thus, Mexico's highest figure I was going to just delete this, but I still don't think... One sec. Mexico's highest figure is travellers to Madrid, which is a little more than 60,000 people per year. I don't understand how we have thus, though. We could just get rid of that. Mexico's highest figure is travellers to Madrid, which is a little more than 60,000 people per year, while the figures for 3 other destinations of tourists from Mexico are at a similar level of 20,000 people per year or slightly more are each. Okay, and also we've used a while to start a sentence without a subordinate clause. So while, in this sense, either goes, it's always used in this sort of way. We could either have while x, comma, y, or x, comma, while y. So at the same time as x is happening, y is also happening. X is happening at the same time y is happening. Either grammatical construction is fine, but there's always a subordinate clause in a while statement after a comma. So we could Mexico's highest figure is travellers to Madrid at a little more than 60,000 people per year, while the figures for the 3 other destinations for travellers from Mexico are each at a similar level of 20,000 people per year or slightly more. Now that's fine. Again, whereas and while follow exactly the same rule. I would expect after this for there to be a subordinate clause saying, so this is slightly different to while. While means at the same time as, whereas means as opposed to, but at the same time as. So we can still have whereas x, y, or x, whereas y. Oh. So this means that these are opposing. X is happening, but the opposite is also happening. Whereas this is happening, the opposite is happening. So we could actually do it like this to make it grammatically correct, but that's too many subordinate clauses. So I'm just going to get rid of this entirely. See, now these two, you've used this respectively to refer to these, but they are completely unrelated. You've got Canadians to Istanbul and Americans to Paris. How are those two things connected? Other than the fact that you've put them in the same sentence. I don't think they are. Respectively, really, should only be used to list things that are related, comparable. There has to be some sort of thing connecting them. Another noticeable point is that Paris and London are... Oh no, this is a very bad word. A guesstimate is a made-up word. Don't use it. It's a trap. Let me see if I can clean this up a bit. One sec. So once again, travellers from Canada, tourists from Canada, people flying from Canada, tourists from Mexico, people travelling from Mexico, people originating from Mexico, whatever. But let's keep nationality and country of origin separate. And once again, whereas, Oh, I know what you're trying to say. Metropolises. Now this would be a good place to use a respective phrase. 100,000 80 and 100,000 Americans assumed to see Paris London and Paris the following year, respectively. Yep, now we're good. So in these task ones, let's make sure you're using while and whereas correctly. Yeah, so in this respect, we're looking at for you, because your task response is all right. You are responding to the task okay, but you maybe in some cases you're structuring your writing, in the case of while and whereas, in a slightly nonsensical way, but also so your grammar and your coherence and cohesion are the two main things that are going to be affected by this. So we need to focus on simplifying your sentences. And making sure that you can express things in a more precise manner. Don't feel so eager to impress. You don't have to write big long sentences or hugely complex grammatical constructions to impress. All you need to have is a range of ability. And to demonstrate a range of ability, you can use mostly simple sentences, but a few long sentences. As long as you do some, you can demonstrate that you have the range. But if you are trying to all the time use long sentences and complex grammatical constructions, you're going to trip yourself up. So let's keep it simple. I don't know whether you've seen the Band 9 essays, the pack of PDFs. I'm sure I've already sent it to you, but I will send it again with this video anyway, just to show you what precise sentences look like, even at the more advanced end of IELTS. So these are Band 9, remember. You don't need to go any further than these do. You don't actually need to go anywhere near the level of complexity that these do. But this, I'm going to set a limit for you. Read through these Band 9 essays and know that you do not need to go further than that. But this is getting quite long now, so I'll send this over to you now. Have a great day, Valentin. I'll speak to you again soon.